Dear chess friends, welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome back to the FIDE Grand Swiss in 2023. So we're now already in the round 4 of this beautiful chess event, but actually I wanted to show you first a beautiful and spectacular game from the round 3. We have here top GM from the USA, Hikaru Nakamura against Aryan Chopra from India. It was a very important moment now for the tournament, at least for Hikaru, because it was already maybe a must-win situation because Hikaru didn't play, I think, his best chess in the first 2 rounds. He had now, as I said, to make at least something to happen in this super event. So let's see now what happened. In my opinion, is also a beautiful strategic game here played by these 2 top grandmasters. So let's see now what happened with the white pieces. Here Hikaru opened with the move d4. Chopra's response was d5. We have c4, the queen's gambit, c6, the Slav defense. We have knight to f3, knight to f6, and after knight to c3, we have now the 3 knights variation. We have now the move e6. We have a transposition into the Semi-Slav defense. We have e3, which is now the main line. It's sort of a quieter approach. I myself like to play c takes d5, undermining the pressure in the center of the board. Here e3 was played by Hikaru, knight from b to d7, bishop to e2, and now basically there are 2 good concepts. You can play, of course, somewhere with the bishop to e7 or bishop to d6 are main lines, or you can go aggressively with the move d takes c4, because what black is always waiting for is white to come out with the bishop, and then after something like bishop to c4, you get an extra tempo, a6, and then c5 leads into a very dynamic position for both sides. But here bishop to d6. Here Chopra is not immediately playing here in the center, waits a little bit also what Hikaru will do now in the continuation of the game. Castling b3, supporting now finally the pawn on c4. Now if d takes c4 happens, we'll simply recapture it with the pawn and then build a powerful mobile center here by white. After b3, b6, we have bishop to b2, bishop to b7. So both players now played a very dynamic fianchetto. Both bishops are now becoming simply the best minor pieces on the board. We have bishop to d3. We have queen to e7 by Aryan Chopra. He's of course trying in some lines, breaking and entering with the move e5 or with the move c5, because black is not tolerating here a slightly better space advantage that white is here in the continuation. So that's why in order to crack the position, you have to play c5 or e5. We have rook to c1 by Hikaru. We have rook from a to c8 by Aryan Chopra. And now Hikaru makes his first, maybe even, I don't know, I would not say that this is anything spectacular, but it's an announcing move that this position could be really dynamic now in the center of the board, because now there are threats of e4, maybe breaking and entering, and also opening up the file against the queen here on e7. So what should black do? In my opinion, Aryan Chopra played maybe even a tiny little, it's not an inaccuracy or something, but maybe a little bit unnecessary to battle somehow here for the e4 square. A better, more dynamic approach, and has been played many times with good success for black, is to break and enter with move c5. Then after something like c takes d5, we also pick up now the pawn on d4. You pick up now also the pawn on d4. Now we pick up the pawn on d5, knight to d5, bishop to d5, and I think this is pretty solid also here for black. You can maybe try to attack the bishop, but then we simply retreat and also control the a7 square. So in my opinion, this would be a good, really a dynamic position now for both sides. But here I move bishop to b4 and knight to d2. Here Hikaru, as we said, controls now the square e4. It's not allowing here black to jump on the square e4, because black would then use the pin by the bishop against the knight. So that's why Hikaru prevents this. And again, Aryan has the opportunity here to play the move c5. I think this would be the best continuation now. Maybe after something like a3, we can even step back. Now you retreat with the bishop, but now with rook to d8, we can also have dynamic chances, at least against the queen here on the d file. But what Aryan Chopra did, he played e5, and basically with this move, he's going into a line that's, I think, slightly favorable here for white, because the queen is lined up, as we said in the beginning, like the rook on the e file. So now you're basically helping out here white to make his plan work. So from e5 here, Hikaru Nakamura plays the beautiful bishop to f5, pins simply the knight, and after e takes d4, look at this, after e takes d4, that's the position that Hikaru wants you to get, an extra tempo against the queen drops back, and now comes a beautiful move. Really, this is a top GM move. Really an important strategic concept that Hikaru Nakamura realized in a deeper way. Maybe you can pause the video and try to see now the best continuation here for white. I'm not saying this continuation is winning or something. It's even not, I think, bringing you so much, but I think it's very important to see such a move. As I said, it's simply a beautiful top grandmaster move. Pause the video and, as I said, try to see now the best continuation. Okay, here Hikaru played a beautiful c5. This is very a spectacular move. I like this kind of moves. I like to see this kind of progressive plans in the middle game stage. That's, I think, what separates me maybe from top grandmasters like Hikaru Nakamura and maybe me, or maybe some other low-rated players. You have to see simply this kind of moves. These are spectacular moves, spectacular breakthrough ideas, because look at this. What happens? If you play something like b takes c5, then you play a3. You can maybe step back, but now after d takes c5, of course, you cannot pick up anymore the pawn, because then b4 is the threat. You could, of course, here after d takes c5 play maybe something like bishop to c3, but then we simply take it out, and now you cannot again take out now the pawn on c5 because of the pin by the bishop against the rook. So very messed up position then for black. So after c5, what you could do is, of course, play b takes c5, then follow the bishop to c3, but now after bishop to c3, maybe something like c takes d4, and after bishop to d4 again, you cannot play c5 because of some threats like this. Queen to h5 will come into the game, of course. If you take with the knight again, then the rook is hanging on c8. So it's really spectacular how Hikaru saw this move. Very nice progressive idea here for white. So after move c5, we have g6, bishop to h3 here by Hikaru. He stays still with this powerful bishop and pins the knight against the rook. We have knight to h5, g3, controlling, of course, the f4 square. B takes c5 comes now, but now after d takes c5, we have bishop to c5, and now knight to a4. Hikaru realized here the potential bad bishop strategy. The bad bishop is, of course, paralyzed now by its own pawn structure, and what we're trying to do now is simply controlling the c5 square, not allowing black to push the pawn on c5. Look at this. After bishop to e7, Hikaru simply takes out now the knight on d7, queen to d7, and now beautiful follow-up knight to e4. You cannot take, of course, because of the tensions on the d file, and now the c5 will occupy. You'll never be able to advance the pawn further. Here the game f6 was played by Aryan Chopra, and now knight to c5. Look how beautiful strategic play here Hikaru Nakamura performed. After knight to c5, bishop to c5, knight to c5, and look at this now. This bishop is simply out of game. This knight is very powerful, and now this bishop becomes simply the most powerful minor piece on the board. Very epic play here by Hikaru Nakamura. Queen to f7, queen to d4, we have knight to d7, queen to a4. Simply playing now on simple threats, because it's almost like white is playing now with an extra piece here. Bishop to a8, we have rook to e2. Here Aryan Chopra competes, of course, on the e file, and after a couple of trades of pieces here, queen to f4, good move by Hikaru, threatened, of course, also in some lines queen to b8. But now after queen to e7, suddenly Hikaru Nakamura started to make tiny little inaccuracies that brought back now Aryan Chopra into the game. Here after move queen to e7, Hikaru, the first unnecessary move that he played was now the move b4, supporting the knight on c5. A better choice, which is maybe even hard to see because it's really sort of a stockfish line, is to play bishop to d4. But it comes with a normal idea. We just improve our minor pieces here on the board. Now the bishop becomes even much more stronger on this square. You could maybe try something like queen to d8 in order to protect the b8 square. But now we simply push g4. Look at this, and after f3, g5, I think would be a devastating position now for to handle for black. If this diagonal gets open, I think in some lines you can get even checkmated by the bishop and queen's activity. So really this would be a new dynamic opportunity in white's position. So as I said, b4 may be slightly inaccurate, but who cares? Still there is this threat of queen to b8. But now for bishop to b7, again queen to b8 should be played here by Hikaru, but now Hikaru played a tiny little inaccuracy again, h3, which is still a good continuation for white. I'm not saying that white should lose the game because white played the game like this, but as we said, queen to b8, very simple threat, always paralyzes the queen here to the defense of the bishop. You can maybe deliver check, but now after something like queen to e2, look at this piece is hanging, this piece is hanging. Maybe you can pick up here the bishop, but as I said, the activity of white is always much more better. The king is here more endangered, especially here on dark square. So this was the way to go. h3 allowed here Aryan Chopra finally to get back into the game. Hikaru has to now protect the pawn. We have bishop to f5, bishop to d4 now, finally by Hikaru Nakamura. Knight to d6, and after g4, here g5 was played by Aryan Chopra, good counterattack. We have queen to f3 and now bishop to e4. After knight to e4, knight to e4. This leads now into very complicated, also we have to say, endgame for white, because here black has this powerful knight on a light square, which cannot be, of course, attacked by the dark square bishop. So it becomes now maybe even equal endgame, but of course, again, with the downside for black that this dark square bishop is simply too powerful. If you advance the pawn maybe to f5, then as we said, you can maybe even get checkmated in some line around the square g7. So we have queen to a3 by Hikaru, simply attacking the pawn. f3, kicking with the knight. Knight to d2. We have queen to a6. Now the best choice here for Aryan Chopra would have been here to play knight to f3, because after king to f3, of course, queen to e4 would be then a good continuation for black. You have to then step back to c5, and then after something like knight to h4, king to f1, still it would be very complicated also to play now the game for both sides. Black has also some issues with the king. White has also some issues with his king on f1. The king is really naked here, but again, maybe there is a problem for black, because if we start to push the pawn on the a file, this passer on the a file, this could be also very dangerous because the knight is simply far away from the action. So as I said, who knows, maybe playable, but this was maybe the only move for Aryan Chopra to play knight takes f3, at least grabbing a pawn, but unfortunately, he played now queen to b4, and here in this particular moment, Hikaru finally gets back, attacks also the knight. The knight drops to c4, and now bishop to f6. So from this point on, the position is collapsing for black. That's the position that Hikaru wanted to get. He's also attacking now this one, and in the next couple moves, the queen could be included into the attack. We have queen to b6, a4. Hikaru also stretches the defense, which is a good strategy here. Push simply the pawn on a4 is saying, you will be occupied with this pawn, but meanwhile I will coordinate then the attack towards the king side with my bishop and queen's activity. So we have bishop to g5 by Hikaru, we have queen takes a4. Even if you try here to play something like queen to d7, then we simply play bishop to h4, then bishop to f2. And as we said, even if you manage somehow to grab this pawn on a4, the king is always a problem here, so it's simply not working also for instance this particular line for black. So after move bishop to g5 here, Aryan Chopra played queen takes a4, queen to e2, queen to a7, now check by Hikaru, queen to e6, and after g takes h5 here, that Hikaru played here in this particular position, Aryan Chopra resigned. What's the issue? You can of course deliver a couple of checks, but always you have to protect your 7th rank, and now after something like, I don't know, here bishop to h6, queen to g7, the game is of course over here for black. So great game by Hikaru in the beginning, but he almost messed it up, allowing here Aryan Chopra to get back into the game. But really great strategies we have seen now by Hikaru. This move c5 was a beautiful breakthrough idea. So let's repeat it again. c5. This was really an epic continuation. This is top GM. Really, d takes c5. Look at this. Knight takes on a4, attacking now the bishop, and now bishop takes d7. Queen takes d7. Knight to e4, and now knight to c5, cementing, fixing the position around the core c5 and blocking out the light square bishop. Perfect strategy here by Hikaru Nakamura. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting ideas here produced by Hikaru against the Semi-Slav defense. If you want to see some other games here commented from this beautiful tournament, check out our commented chess games here so far. Here's the link of our playlist, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say? Chess is the best, of course.